Blachowicz versus Ankalaev took place in the main event of UFC 282, and the fight was scored a draw, which means no one won the vacant light heavyweight world championship that was on the line, and it was very, very controversial. And I personally believe, and I'm going to tell you why I believe this in a second, that Joe Rogan owes Jan Blachowicz an apology, and I also believe that Joe Rogan was very, very unprofessional in the way that he handled the post-fight octagon interviews between Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. And I think it really did paint the narrative that Ankalaev got robbed brutally in this fight and Jan Blachowicz should have lost. In my opinion, and this is why I think Joe Rogan was out of line, unprofessional, and owes Blachowicz an apology. And I'm going to play you guys the audio of the octagon interview and compare it to other octagon interviews in the past as well to get across my message. This fight can be scored a draw. And I need to say this before I get into the main portion of the video. This fight can be scored a draw. Watching it live, I gave round 1 to Ankalaev barely. And round 1 is what it comes down to. If you don't know, round 2 was Blachowicz's. Round 3 was Blachowicz based on damage because he hurt the leg of Ankalaev. Round 4 was Ankalaev because he got a takedown at the halfway point and secured that round. Very, very clear round. And round 5 was a 10-8 to Ankalaev, which means it's all down to round 1. If Ankalaev wins round 1, he wins the fight. If Blachowicz wins round 1, it could be a draw. The way Rogan acted in the post-fight moments of this fight in the octagon and stuff like that, he acted like this was one of the worst robberies of all time. And it was terrible the way he acted. And I personally believe he kind of coerced Jan Blachowicz into guiltily feeling like he had to come out and say that he should have lost and Ankalaev should have won. And I think that was very bad of him to do. And I'm going to play you the audio of the post-fight interview because this fight can be scored a draw. I didn't know who won round 1. I edged towards Ankalaev. But if Blachowicz wins round 1, it's a draw. It's not a bad decision compared to Pimlet Gordon in the co-main event. And that's what I'm going to compare Joe Rogan's actions to, because there weren't none of this pressing in the co-main event in the Paddy Pimlet post-fight speech. We start straight away here with the interview of Jan Blachowicz. Joe Rogan's first words to Jan Blachowicz after the decision has been called.
Jan, it was an excellent fight. You went to raise Ankalaev's hand after the fight. Is that because you believe that he should have won the decision?
So Joe Rogan has a belief. You know, Jan Blachowicz goes over to Ankalaev afterwards, raises up his hands and stuff like that, and shows him some respect after the fight. Now, I understand that this could have fueled Joe Rogan's actions after the fight, but I think he went way too far. And I think even before Jan Blachowicz raised the hand of Ankalaev, Rogan knew that he was going to go down this direction in the post-fight interview. So he asks Jan Blachowicz, did you raise Ankalaev's hand because you thought he won? This is the response of Jan Blachowicz. I hope you can hear this.
I have to watch the fight, but for sure I don't want the fight. I don't know that I lose the fight, but for sure I'm not the winner.
So he literally answers Joe Rogan's question. Joe Rogan thinks, oh, do you think you lost? And that's why you raised the hand of Ankalaev. And Jan Blachowicz goes, I don't know, I need to go back and watch the fight, but I know I didn't win, but I'm not sure if I lost the fight. So he's literally saying in that sentence, it could have been a draw. That's my belief. Like, I know I didn't win, but I might have won the first 3 rounds, which means it could have been a draw. So he doesn't know if he won. He definitely didn't win the fight, but he's not sure if he lost it. That tells me Blachowicz thinks that fight could have been a draw. But if anyone could have won, it could have been Ankalaev. And Joe Rogan gets his question answered.
I have to watch, my head is,
And he talks about the fact that his head is all over the place because he took damage in round 5. And then Joe Rogan, after hearing that Blachowicz thinks that it could have been a draw and that he doesn't think that he lost the fight, Rogan takes the mic back again and says this, which is crazy.
I know, but you are a very honorable man. The way you did that, to me, that felt like you felt you lost that decision.
He didn't say that at all. And I'm going to compare Rogan saying all of this. And there's more to this as well. I'm not just reaching at this one little moment. I'm going to compare this to the Pimlet interview, to the Jones-Reyes interview, to other interviews in the past as well in the UFC. Rogan, for some reason in this fight, was so hell-bent on getting Blachowicz to admit that he lost. And Blachowicz didn't want to. But we listen to this next part from Jan Blachowicz after Rogan says that. I personally believe that you thought you lost that fight. Basically what Rogan just said. We listen to Blachowicz's response.
If you saw the fight, I don't know, you know.
You saw the fight, I don't know, you know.
I'm a fighter, I see
I am fighter, I see different, you know. And
sorry,
he
my
stops
head is
himself.
low.
His head's a bit off.
I don't feel that I'm a winner, you know.
I don't feel that I'm the one that's the winner. No one won, by the way. It was a draw. So it's not like he was given the belt and this is his apology for being given the belt. It was a draw.
But I need to watch the fight.
But he needs to watch the fight back.
Maybe we can do it the rematch and that's it.
Yeah,
I'm not the judge.
I'm not the judge.
I
When he goes, he puts 3 fingers up after he goes, So I think he was literally about to say first 3 rounds could have gone to him. Like, first 3 rounds were very close. So he doesn't know what the decision was.
I understand, sir.
I don't know.
I know, rematch.
And then we move on from there. Okay, and we start talking about a rematch and stuff like that, and Blachowicz goes away. But Joe Rogan was hell-bent almost on trying to get Blachowicz to say that he lost that fight. And Blachowicz doesn't know because his head's all over the place. We move on, and this is the bit where it gets even worse. Blachowicz is watching this in the cage, seeing what Rogan is going to say to Ankalaev. And he's in the cage watching what goes down in this next part of the interview. Listen to what... Have you ever heard this been said? After a decision has been called. We just watched Pimlet Gordon. We've seen Jones Reyes. We've seen so many bad decisions in the history of the UFC. Listen to what Rogan says. First words on the mic when he's speaking to Ankalaev.
We thought you won the fight.
We thought you won the fight. Like, okay. It was very close. Why are you putting this message out there, like getting your opinion out there? And he keeps going on this as well.
When DC and I, at the end of the fight, we thought you had done enough, particularly in the last rounds. You utilized your...
Like, we thought you'd done enough. We, on the desk, we were talking about you did enough. And I think he went so unprofessional here. And he had a belief that Ankalaev won, which many had. I get it. But to do this in the middle of the cage afterwards and almost make it a fact that Ankalaev won with how close that first round was, and basically create this narrative with the words that he's saying in the cage afterwards to each of these men. Asking if Jan Blachowicz thinks he lost. Blachowicz says, I don't know if I won, but it could have been a draw. And then goes, well, I personally believe that you think you lost. And then we move on to here again.
Grappling. Were you surprised that you did not get the decision?
Were you surprised that you did not get the decision? And then we move on to another moment here. And 38 seconds left, and Blachowicz is listening to all of this go down, and Joe Rogan answering and asking, like, were you surprised everyone on the desk thought that you won? I personally thought you won. And then Blachowicz is listening to all of this, and then he has to come in and interrupt and say,
Compromise.
give the belt Ankalaev, you know.
You think he should get the belt?
you think he should get the belt? You know what I mean? And then Rogan goes,
I agree.
I agree. Like, this is a very close fight, and Blachowicz, whilst concussed, which he admitted himself, he's like, his head's all over the place after the fight. He might not have lost, but he definitely didn't win. It could have been a draw. Rogan's like guilting him into this by like, it's so unprofessional to me. And it's only unprofessional because of how other bad decisions, way worse decisions than this. This isn't even bad. It genuinely could have been a draw. But Rogan's actions have spun this narrative. People can think Ankalaev won. You can't call this a robbery. You know what I mean? It's so unprofessional. And he starts giving, like, a round of applause to Jan Blachowicz. But we even go to 1 minute 42 here. Here we are.
No matter if I felt pain, I did everything to get this victory.
I did everything to get this victory.
You certainly did. You made the proper adjustments.
You certainly did do everything to get this victory and, start siding with him again.
That was what was so impressive.
We move on to 2 minutes 32 here. I think Rogan says something else, otherwise I wouldn't have included it. 2 minutes 32. And we're going to get to comparing it to others.
What just happened?
Well, unfortunately, the organization does not get to choose who the judges are or get to make the judges' decisions.
Like, he's like going at the judges in the octagon with Ankalaev. I've never heard any of this. And this was a fight that could have been scored a draw. When you think about it. And he's like talking about, unfortunately, we can't choose the judges, and this is what happens with the judges. You know what I mean? Like and then I compare this, and this is the reason where it's going to get real unprofessional looking from Joe Rogan. This is the Paddy Pimblett interview with what could have been one of the worst robberies in recent UFC history. This is the Paddy Pimblett interview.
I'm naming the winner, Paddy the Baddy. Paddy, that was a close one.
That was a close one.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't close. You just see how much you're paying me for
And then
this
Pimblett
interview.
responds. And Rogan's there smiling, laughing with him. And then Rogan continues and says,
You don't think it was a close fight at all?
Not at all. I won the first 2 rounds.
no, not at all. Oh, you don't think it was close at all? You don't think it was close? That was a close one. Where's the... You believe you lost that fight. And where's the Gordon moment where we thought Jared Gordon won that fight? You know? Me and DC at the desk and everyone at the desk, we thought Jared Gordon did enough to win that fight when the decision was being called. Where's this with Pimblett? An absolute brutal robbery. We go to Jones versus Reyes. First words to John Jones after one of the worst title fight robberies in the past decade of the UFC.
John, congratulations.
John, congratulations. I had it lowered down on volume.
You seemed...
No mention of, did you think you lost, or...
You seemed incredibly focused for this fight.
You seemed incredibly focused for this fight.
You knew what a challenge Dominic Reyes was going to present here tonight. Was anything about this fight surprising to you?
Where's the... We thought you lost. You know, we all thought on the desk that you won. Where's this getting Jones to admit that he lost the fight? Where's the call out to the judges? We move on to 1 minute 28. Like, it's just... I feel like he really has a thing against Blachowicz. And I think it was very apparent in the Blachowicz-Adesanya fight. It was very, very apparent in the Blachowicz versus Adesanya fight, I think. Like, Joe Rogan... I don't know if Blachowicz is his favorite fighter, is all I'm going to say.
Now, going into the 4th and 5th rounds, the championship rounds, you really turned up the pressure. Constantly
He turned up the pressure and all that.
Were you thinking it was possible that the judges had given him those first 3?
Was it possible? Did you think it could have been possible for the judges to score him the first 3? Look how differently worded that is for a brutal robbery compared to a very close fight with Blachowicz Ankalaev, where he basically says, to me, it looked like you thought you lost. Even though he just asked if he thought that, and Blachowicz said no, it could have been a draw, but he definitely didn't win. Like, I actually really don't like this. 204.
Oh, John, not only did you win this fight, but you now have won the most championship fights ever in the history of the sport. So congratulations.
It just moves on to praising John Jones, and then we go to Dominic Reyes. And we get his questions to... Remember when he went up to Ankalaev, he said, I thought you won. Everybody on the desk thought you won that fight. And listen to what he says to Dominic Reyes. His first words to him. At 3 minutes 43 on the clock. For a brutal robbery, by the way.
Dominic, incredibly close fight.
Incredibly close. People cheer for him.
Thoughts at the final buzzer. Did you think you had done enough to take the title?
Did you think you'd done enough to take the title? Like, it's so differently worded in such a stark comparison in levels of bad decision.
I thought I won 1 through 3. He had me...
And then Reyes goes on to explain that he thinks he won. But it's never said by the actual person, Joe Rogan. It's left to be answered by the guy who's in question here, who's been robbed. Ankalaev, it was a close fight. It could have been a draw. I don't blame judges for scoring that fight a draw. So for Rogan to openly say, we thought you won at the desk, me and DC and the guys, we thought you won as well. And he just put his own message out there and even like skewer what Jan said and sort of like bait a fucking admittance of the fact that he lost out of Jan Blachowicz, eventually guilt tripping him to come over whilst concussed and say, give him the belt, you know, you'll give him the belt, you know, and all this type of stuff. Like, so unprofessional from Rogan. And we can even go to like Adesanya, Whittaker. I personally believe the Adesanya-Whittaker 2 decision was more controversial than the Blachowicz versus Ankalaev decision. It was. I think Whittaker won. And a lot of people do as well. First words to Israel Adesanya. Champ.
Another title defense.
Another title defense.
Was that the fight you expected from Robert Whittaker?
Was that the fight you expected? Nothing about the decision. And they don't even mention it. But for some reason in Blachowicz Ankalaev, it's like, to me it looked like you knew you lost. I thought you won, Ankalaev. When we were at the desk, me and DC, we thought you did enough to win. Like, I think it was so biased, so unprofessional. And it just is, it stinks a little bit of bias, mainly because I know how fucking biased Rogan was against Blachowicz in that Adesanya fight. You know what I mean? Like, forget, like, it was crazy to me. Like, he started talking about the first 3 rounds, and they, on the commentary, they were talking about, you know, unless Adesanya has the first 3 rounds banked, this could be a Blachowicz win. They weren't like, all of a sudden it's... And it was basically a similar fight, right? First 3 rounds, close toss-ups, very close rounds, that Blachowicz arguably got the better of. But then he got the takedowns at the end of the rounds. He became Ankalaev to himself against Israel Adesanya by 10-9ing the 4th. And not quite 10-8 in the 5th, but one judge did give it that. So it's a very similar situation. And they handled it so very differently. And it really did annoy me. And I think he baited and sort of guilt-tripped Jan Blachowicz to almost own up to a loss that he didn't even know he had. And if you watch the post-fight interviews of Jan Blachowicz backstage, he has people coming up to him telling him stuff like, you know, it was way closer than you think. Like, the first 3 rounds, it could have actually been a draw. And he said, like, people have been coming up to him and saying that it wasn't as bad of a decision as people think. Like, it genuinely could have been a draw. Don't think you lost. So for Rogan to sort of manipulate a concussed Blachowicz and, like, milk an admittance of a loss out of him, and then go over to Ankalaev and say, we thought you won, everybody at the desk thought you won, me and DC, we were saying that you did enough to win, and all this type of stuff, and I agree, he should get the belt. It was crazy to me. This could have been a draw, and it was treated as if Ankalaev 50-45'd him clear, and they somehow gave it a draw. When we had none of this energy for Jones Reyes, not an ounce of this energy other than, that was a close one, with Pimlet versus Gordon. I genuinely believe, I'm not even making this up, this is my conspiracy around this. If it ain't Rogan being biased against Blachowicz, they made a bigger deal out of the main event decision to try and cover up in any possible way they can the absolute atrocity of a decision that the co-main event was. That's my final take. If this isn't Rogan being completely biased and having a bit of an agenda going into this and being unprofessional as hell, this is a planned, make a big deal out of a bad decision in a main event so the co-main don't seem so bad. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Am I reaching? Am I not? I feel like I'm not. Never seen someone do that in the cage afterwards so openly like that for a fight that literally could have been scored a draw, although I disagree with it. Not a robbery. And they acted like it was the worst of all time. Goodbye.